Hello viewers! Today I'm going to be doing a makgeolli homebrewing experiment. I'm going to be changing the timing of the second stage. For a two-stage makgeolli brew, normally I start the second stage 2 days after the first stage. But what if I vary this timing? How important is it that it's exactly 2 days after the first stage? So I'm going to try a longer first stage that lasts 3 days, and I'm also going to try a shorter first stage that lasts only 1 day. And those are the two brews that I will compare. Now, I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 stage recipes before. Take a look at my earlier videos. Look at my makgeolli recipes playlist, and you'll see a variety of recipes. I hope you find that useful. Now, if you like this video, please click that like button and subscribe. Click the bell to be notified of any updates. I have a new video every Thursday. And please share this video wherever it is appropriate. So these are the ingredients for my Yeongju, my two-stage makgeolli brew. I bought the salgaru, the NURUK and the chopped sal at H Mart, and I got the white wine yeast from Amazon. So these are all the ingredients plus water that you need to make delicious Korean rice wine. So these are the 2 stages of my Yeongju. The first stage is juk, a porridge. The second stage is godubap, steamed rice. And for the first stage is going to last for 3 days, and for B, the first stage is only going to last for 1 day. And for both of them, I'm going to let the second stage brew until the match stays lit. Yes, I'm using the match test. And I'm going to let that determine how long I let the second stage go for. So let's brew. So stage 0, starting off with the juk, the salgaru juk. So 200 grams of rice flour, 900 milliliters of water. Let's make some salgaru juk, some rice flour porridge. So I stir on medium heat until it thickens, and figure 8 is a good motion to use because it crosses the center of the pot twice each time, and the center of the pot is the hottest part of the pot. So that's a good motion to use. And for me, at this temperature, it takes 9 minutes about for it to thicken up. Okay, now it's thick. I'll set it aside and let it cool to room temperature. As we're waiting for it to cool, I will mix up my NURUK. This is the NURUK, the NURUK powder. 90 grams of NURUK, 200 milliliters of water, and half a teaspoon of wine yeast, which is optional, but I like the wine yeast. So after the juk is cool, add in the NURUK mixture and start stirring. And it might take 5 or 10 minutes of stirring to get it really mixed up. If you want it well incorporated, the more you stir at this stage, the easier things are going to be later on. And you really want it to be liquid. You want it to be pourable, because you have to get this rice flour porridge into the jar, and if it's not pourable, you're going to have a hard time. So let's see how successful I am here. Will I be able to pour the pot into the jar? Okay, a little tense there, but I think yeah, it worked out. It worked out fine. And that's jar A. And ferment that somewhere dark and with consistent temperature. It's about 20 degrees Celsius in my basement. The next day, stir twice. And it is bubbling and fermenting away. It is normal. And the next day, day 2, stir that jar again twice. The bubbles have calmed down a bit. Now it's time to make the first stage for jar B. And once again, the 200 grams of rice flour and 900 milliliters of water, and make the juke. So this is exactly the same as what we did for A, but we're doing it 2 days later. And again, it takes about 9 minutes for this to thicken up. Okay, so set that aside to cool to room temperature. And again, we're going to mix up some NURUK and water and yeast. 900 grams of NURUK, 200 milliliters of water, and half a teaspoon of wine yeast, same as A. Okay, and every once in a while I stir it to help it cool down uniformly. And when it's cool, I pour in the NURUK mixture and stir that up again. So let's see how this works out for me. Is this liquid enough to pour? Of course, you want to make sure you get all the corners so you don't have any residue that's not mixed in properly. And this can sort of wear out your hand, but it's worth doing right. Okay, can I pour this into the jar successfully? And okay, got lucky again. That worked out. Keep the lid loose as always. You need some air circulation. So for both A and B, the lids are loose. So now it's day 3. So jar A has been fermenting a while, and A has settled into layers and only has small bubbles, whereas B is uniform and has large bubbles. So we're going to stir both of these. Okay, so they do look different. The next thing we have to do is make some Godubab. This is for both A and B. We need Godubab. 800 grams for each of those. And this is a little bit more because I'm doing another project alongside this that needs some Godubab. So this is more than 1.6 kilograms, what you're seeing here. But I'm just going to use the portion of the Godubab that corresponds to 800 grams of raw rice for each of A and B. So as usual, wash the rice gently till the water is pretty clear, and then fill it up again and let it soak for at least 3 hours. And you could do it overnight. I wouldn't really do it more than that. And after it's soaked for more than 3 hours, let it drain. Rinse it off one last time and let it drain for 30 minutes. Now I have my steamer ready. The water is almost boiling in the lower portion of the steamer there. I wet my cheesecloth and poured in my rice, arranged it so to fill up all the full area of the steamer, and now let the water boil again and start counting from that point and steam for 40 minutes. And after 40 minutes, carefully remove the cloth and lift all the rice out. And then we're going to want to cool down this steamed rice. This is the go-to-bob. Want to cool the go-to-bob to room temperature. And so that'll take an hour or two, but it'll cool down nicely on this rack. And I'm going to use the scale to divide the rice. Like I said, I want the go-to-bob that corresponds to 800 grams of raw rice. This is A, that had 3 days for stage 1. And stir it one last time here. Put in the portion of rice. And I want to separate each individual grain of rice with my hand. Stir everything up. That looks good. And keep the lid loose. And here's B, that had a single day for stage 1. And it's the same amount of rice, the amount of rice corresponding to 800 grams of raw rice. And mix that one up by hand, break up any rice stuck together. That looks good. And then they both go into the basement to ferment again. So let's see if these two jars behave differently. Next day, day 4, it'll look pretty similar right now. They both have bubbles. For A, I hear larger bubbles. And for B, I hear smaller bubbles. The top is wet and gooey. I'm going to ferment each jar until the match test tells me to stop. If the match goes out, keep fermenting. If the match stays lit, it's time to stop. So here's A. And the match goes out right at the top there. Just lower it into the jar and it goes out right away for B as well. Okay, next day we can see some separation. Do the match test again. Same thing, both matches go out. So you see more separation. There's a layer of liquid at the bottom. They still look different on the top. There's a visible difference. And both matches still go out a little lower this time. So now it's day 8. You can see the liquid layer at the bottom. It seems like A has some more rice that has fallen down to the bottom though. And again, the match test, I have to lower the match down farther, but it still goes out. And you can see more of the difference with A now. More rice has fallen down to the bottom of jar A. Matches are still going out, but day 10, A and B do look different. And it looks like A is progressing faster or further along on the fermentation, because not only did it separate, but rice is falling to the bottom. But in terms of the match test, they are still looking very similar. Now it's day 11, so the layers look different. The match for A goes out, and the match for B goes out. Day 12, okay, but visually they do look different from the side and from the top. Okay, so will the match go out? No, the match stayed lit. What about for B? Same thing for B, the match stays lit. So both A and B are done on the same day. So A fermented for 12 days and the first stage lasted 3 days. B fermented for 10 days. The first stage lasted only 1 day. So this is what they look like. A is more uniform, looks like it's progressed farther along in terms of fermentation, and B has more of a layer of sediment on the bottom that's not rice. So it does look different, but both of them fermented, and they both fermented for the same length of time for the second stage. So I want to filter and bottle, so I need to boil my filter bag. And I'll stir jar A one last time here. Get my filter bag in position and dump it into the bowl. Yeah, that's pretty good. And squeeze this out. Okay, not difficult to squeeze this. I like using filter bags like this that can hold the full amount of the jar. And here's the jigame, 257 grams left over. And get the brew in the plastic bottles. So it's almost 2 liters. I'll wash and boil the filter bag again. And I'll stir jar B, which is very liquid as well. So dump jar B into the filter bag. Right, also looking good. And I'll squeeze this. This took a little more effort to squeeze through the bag. But I end up getting pretty much the same amount of liquid. The amount of jigame is almost the same as jar A. And I end up with almost 2 liters of end product. So there are some things that are the same here. They both had a successful fermentation. The weight of jigame, the least leftover, was the same. And the second stage brew time was also the same. But there's also some things that are different. Jar A's fermentation progressed more. And when I taste A, it's milkier and then harsher, whereas B is sweeter and milder. Also, A settles more than B. There's more of a clear layer. Proportionally, there's more of the transparent layer on A compared with B. And you can see that 3 days later, A has settled quite a bit more than B. It's quite noticeable. So there's a real difference in outcome. It should be noted that it did have a successful fermentation for both of these. So that exact timing of 2 days was not mandatory. You are able to brew 1 day or the 3 days. I was used to following the recipes that used that 2-day gap between the first and the second stage. And what I'm going to do is taste it more carefully now. I'm going to taste the changju, that's the clear layer. So I'm going to pour that. I'm going to taste the wanju, which is both layers mixed together. And I'm going to dilute the wanju with water 1-to-1. And that's pretty much what I call premium makgeolli. And I'll give you my tasting observations right now. So I let these 2 brews settle in the fridge for 3 days. I'm going to taste them now. And I noticed that A, which had a 3-day first stage, has settled more than B, which only had the 1-day first stage. So it does seem like A did have more complete fermentation and it has settled better. Other thing I noticed is that it's harder to shake up A. It seems to be more stuck on the bottom, where B, things are still floating, nothing is stuck on the bottom of the bottle. So I'm going to taste the wanju first. This is A and this is B. B smells a little sweeter. So A is nice and milky, rich flavor. And B seems a little milder. The texture is smoother, but maybe a little powdery too. The flavor is milder. They both have enough alcohol though. If I had to guess, I'd say that A was stronger in alcohol. A has richer flavor and B has milder flavor. Now let's try it in diluted Wanju form. Again, this is A and this is B. Yeah, it's just going to taste more refreshing when it's diluted. Has a lighter texture, both of them. You know, these both taste like makgeolli. I guess one of the interesting things is that even though this might seem like a big change in the recipe, changing the length of the first stage, you still get a brew out of this. It did seem like having a longer first stage meant a more complete fermentation, and the flavor of having a short first stage, it is milder and maybe like immature, but also fresher. So simpler and fresher, and longer first stage has a deeper flavor and might be a little stronger in alcohol. But either way, it still worked. So that's another reason why this is such a robust recipe. You can make these kinds of changes and you still get makgeolli as the end product. Yeah, and again, it does seem like B is a little sweeter. Finally, let's taste the two Chongjus. They're both still a bit cloudy right now. Let's see. Sometimes you get a nice aroma out of the Chongju. It's possible to get it a little floral or fruity aroma out of it. These are pretty plain. I taste the beginnings of some butteriness in A here. And B is a little simpler and sharper. Okay, but again, they're quite similar, and despite the difference in timing and the difference in settlement, you still get a drinkable brew at the end. So there's a lot of room for variation, and the recipe is robust. So let me know what variations you're trying in your brewing. I'd love to hear about what you're brewing. Please let me know what you want me to try next. There's just a lot more left to explore here. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for watching.